Obviously, if I got Thor's powers now, I'm not really Jane Foster. Quote Jane Foster. What if, Volume 1, Issue 10, what if Jane Foster had found the hammer of Thor on Earth 788? The Watcher says, I am the Watcher, and I have often peered into fable Asgard, home to the legendary Norse gods, observing the heroics of Thor, the hammer-wielding thunder god. But even a Watcher can entertain thoughts of curiosity. He then poses the question, what if Jane Foster had found the hammer of Thor? The Watcher continues, saying, of course a woman did not find the legendary hammer, at least not on your Earth. In truth, no, I watched. On Earth 616 many years before Jane Foster didn't become Thor. While Thor was battling Gore the Butcher, Jane was diagnosed with breast cancer. She later accepted Thor's invitation to represent Midgard Earth in the Congress of the Worlds on Asgard while undergoing therapy, but she refused magical treatment. During the battle against Nick Fury, Thor lost the ability to wield his hammer. The hammer remained unattended on the moon, where it telepathically reached out to Jane. Eventually, Jane heeded the hammer's call and requested Heimdall to take her to its location. Once there, she picked up Mjolnir and gaining its powers and transforming with her physique in hand. But now we shift focus back to Earth 788, where the Watcher says, some years ago on the rocky coast of Norway, your world was visited by a group of would-be conquerors from the planet Saturn. On this very day, fate was about to weave its mysterious pattern. While attempting to flee from them, he inadvertently discovered a cave hidden from mortal eyes. Donald Blake says, made it, but they're bound to find me soon. If only there were a way out. Wait, there's another chamber, a secret room. Inside there was nothing but a gnarled wooden stick resembling an ancient cane. We continue with Earth 616 origin story as we see Dr. Blake attempt to use his stick as a lever to move the enormous boulder, blocking the rear exit of the cave. When he failed in frustration, he angrily struck the boulder with the cane. In a blinding explosion of light, the transformation occurred. On that same day, the mighty Thor, with the power of his awesome hammer, sent the so-called stone men from Saturn cowering. These events are retold from the classic Journey into Mystery issue 83. Thor exclaims, the cane, it has become a mighty hammer, and I have been transformed into Thor, the legendary thunder god, the mightiest warrior of all mythology. This is the hammer, and I am Thor. The Watcher continues. But back to my question. Obviously, the answer is not to be discovered upon your Earth, Earth 616. However, there are infinite parallel worlds within the multiverse, countless Earths existing in the same space, but in a different dimension. Perhaps one such Earth will provide our answer. This Earth is Earth 788. History on Earth 788 mirrors that of Earth 616 until the moment Donald Blake takes his fateful trip to Norway. In this reality, Jane Foster accompanies him. Donald Blake is attracted to Jane Foster, and Jane wishes Donald would make an advance. She feels conflicted about not making a move herself. Meanwhile, Donald Blake thinks to himself, only I could tell her how much I love her, but a woman so beautiful could never love a cripple. When the alien Kronans choose Norway as the staging ground for their invasion of Earth, Donald Blake and Jane Foster unwillingly stumble upon their plot. The Kronan leader, Korg, famously known from the movies and comics, remarked, this atmosphere is to our advantage. We are mightier beings, but here in this oxygen-rich environment, our strength is even greater. Spotting Blake and Foster trying to flee, Korg commanded, Earthlings, they must have seen us. They must die. After them. Do not let them escape. As they fled from the Kronans, it was Jane who slid down the cliff in pursuit of Blake's walking stick, inadvertently discovering the cavern where Odin had hidden and disguised Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, as a simple walking stick. When Jane came across it, she struck it against a rock and was transformed into an avatar of Thor's power. Realizing she had found Thor's hammer, she decided to use her newfound abilities to save the Earth and dubbed herself Thordis. Jane exclaimed, no, I am not dreaming. The stick, it's changed into some kind of strange hammer, and somehow I've been transformed. But into whom or what? Good grief, my hair. It's turned blonde, almost like spun gold. And my clothes, they've been replaced by this costume that looks something out of a bygone age. But this is impossible. Wait, there's some writing on the hammer. Reading the inscription she saw. Whoever holds this hammer, if he be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor. Jane continued. I've heard of Thor, the thunder of God of Norse mythology. Obviously, if I've got his powers now, I'm not really Jane Foster anymore. Maybe I should call myself something else. I remember a Norwegian girl from nursing school named Thordis that has a nice ring to it. All right then, that's what I'll call myself, Thordis. As Thordis tested out her newfound strength, the Kronans caught off with Donald Blake. Thor grabbed Blake and threw him over the cliff, but Thordis, now fully in control of her powers, swooped in just in time to save him. As Thordis, Jane Foster easily defeated the Kronans, forcing them to retreat in fear. After securing Earth's safety, she decided to keep her double identity a secret. Jane transformed back into her normal form and reunited with Donald Blake, who remained unaware of her new powers. As they stood together, NATO forces arrived just in time to witness the alien invasion fleet fleeing into space, unaware that it was Thordis who had saved the day. In this reality, Heimdall also served as a guardian of Bifrost. When Loki sought to escape his imprisonment within a tree, he caused a leaf to fall into Heimdall's eye, forcing him to shed a tear, which broke the spell and set Loki free. Once freed, Loki immediately sought revenge against his brother Thor, detecting Thor's power on Earth and plotting his next move. Meanwhile, on Earth, some people have turned into negative versions of themselves. Jane Foster runs into an alley, pulls out her hairbrush, which she had carved from the stick, and transforms into Thordis. She spins her hammer at such high speeds that it acts like a fan, dispersing the strange antimatter particles affecting the people. Suddenly, Loki appears. Loki says, there is much here I do not understand, like how my brother is now more my sister. Perhaps during my age of imprisonment, Odin seared a daughter, or maybe Thor has fallen victim to a sinister spell. Whatever the reason, whoever wields the power of Thor is an enemy to Loki, so I shall challenge you instead of Thor. Thordis knows that Loki is capable of many evils and refuses to back down from the challenge. Following him into the air, Loki thinks to himself, my plan is working perfectly. Being superhuman like myself, Thordis cannot be defeated by my magic alone, but there are more ways, like maneuvering her so that the sun's rays reflect off her hammer and into her lovely eyes each time it passes in front of her. Loki continues thinking to himself, the blinking reflection combined with the power of suggestion will soon have her hypnotized. He then tells Thordis, you are tired, Thordis, too tired to stay awake. You must sleep. I am now your master, Thordis, and whatever I command you must obey. Wanting Mjolnir for himself, Loki conjures a form of Thor and orders her to return the hammer to him. Loki says, behold, Thor the mighty, the thunder god. The hammer is his. Give it to him. Still under hypnosis, Thordis responds, yes, I must return it to Thor. But just as she is about to hand over the hammer, she snaps out of it and says, but master, the hammer belongs to him, and yet, no, wait. Unlike Earth 616 Thor, who once gave his hammer to the crafty god of mischief, Thordis refuses and exclaims, no way, Loki. She strikes him and asserts, the hammer is mine now, and I'm keeping it. Thordis brings Loki to a high tower, ties him to the hammer, and then hurls the hammer with Loki into space. However, she doesn't simply abandon him in space. Thordis knew exactly where to send him. She aimed him for Asgard, and when Loki lands, the people of Asgard are far from pleased to see him, immediately grabbing holding of him. Loki, trying to avoid conflict, quickly says, wait, I did not come here to seek a battle today. I demand an audience with my beloved stepfather. Seeking revenge, Loki goes to Odin and informs him that Thor is once again active on Earth. Delighted, Odin believes that Thor has finally learned his lesson in humility and calls him back to Asgard. However, instead of Thor, it is Jane Foster who answers the call. She flies through the dimension and arrives at the Golden City, much to the shock and surprise of everyone in Asgard. Jane Foster arrives to speak with Odin. Initially angry, Odin declares, I summoned my son, not someone wearing Thor's raiment. I warn the woman that my presence is no humor for jesting. But as Odin notices the enchanted Mjolnir in the hands, he pauses and says, never mind. Odin continues, none save Thor himself may hold the mystic mallet. His anger grows and one of the soldiers mutters, could this be the prophecy of Ragnarok? Odin, managing to surpass his fury to avoid jeopardizing the realm, continues, ordinarily I would blame Loki for such blasphemy, but even this is beyond an evil power. The true villain is fate itself. Odin then recalls, in ages past my favorite son Thor proved lacking humility. Thus I stripped the thunder god of his powers and enchanted hammer Mjolnir, banishing him to Midgard in the mortal disguise of Donald Blake so they might learn humility. He reflects on this moment, which first appeared in Thor issue 159, and adds, yet by some quirk of fate, though, a woman did come upon it instead. After an altercation with the Warriors 3, Thordis was treated poorly due to her unwanted advances by the Warriors 3. Despite this, she fought back and delivered a powerful smackdown to the Warriors 3, proving her strength. However, the conflict escalated, and Odin, furious over the situation, intervened, declaring this ungodly conflict must cease. Odin banished Thordis back to Earth. In his anger, he claimed that his only heir was now Loki, further complicating the already tense situation in Asgard. Thordis, despite her victory in the fight, was sent back to Midgard as a result of an unwanted altercation. Odin declares, and from this moment hence do I banish Thordis from the golden realm of Asgard, and by my will to return never. With Thordis gone and Odin deeply bereaved, Loki begins plotting to take over Asgard. Meanwhile, Lady Sif's heart grows heavy with sorrow as she thinks to herself, it's been long been said that when I reach womanhood and when Thor did eventually return to the realm of the Eternals, then someday the god of thunder and I, Sif, might wed. But my long wait has been for nothing. Thordis, now back on Earth, would embark on many adventures, clashing with villains like the Radioactive Man. However, Thordis defeats the Radioactive Man with Mjolnir, as the villain seems to have forgotten that Thor had already beaten him in earlier issues. Thordis would go on to face other deadly foes such as Molto, who sought to turn the world into lava. Thordis destroys an active volcano just as Thor did in issue 97. She then takes on both Mr. Hyde and Cobra, with Mr. Hyde once again finding a way to steal Thor's hammer just as he did in issue 105 and 106. However, even without the hammer, Thordis, like Thor, proves to be stronger than both villains and defeats them. Later, she would help form the Avengers and feel at ease, realizing that the mostly male group was not intimidated by her immense powers. Additionally, the Wasp was delighted to have her as part of the team, embracing Thordis' presence with enthusiasm. Shortly thereafter, Thordis would clash with Zarko the Tomorrow Man, just as Thor himself did in issue 86. During this time, Odin would enter his Odin's sleep, but he feared the realm would be vulnerable without Thor to defend it, much like what happened in issue 154. Odin laments, for 'tis the sovereign's duty to acquire life, renewed by sleeping, the legendary Odin sleep. If only Thor's powers could guard the unprotected realm while I slumber, but not even Odin shall summon the banished Thordis back to these hallowed halls. Loki sees the Odin's pride and stubbornness will prevent him from interfering with his plans. While his father sleeps, Loki notices Lady Sif walking toward the Rainbow Bridge, realizing she will not be able to help defend against him. Meanwhile, back on Midgard, Loki learns that Sif's actions were not driven by cowardice, but by something else entirely. As Donald Blake thinks to himself, I should have told Jane I love her long ago, but now we've drifted apart. It's already too late. Her strange absence from work. Maybe she's tired of working for a lame doctor like me. Just then he hears someone scream for help. Sif, meanwhile, would travel to Earth and seek out Donald Blake. Hearing a woman's cry from the water, Blake, despite his physical limitation, painfully swims out to save the raven-haired beauty. Once he reaches her, she stops panicking, embraces him, and kisses him, saying she knew their love would not allow her to perish. Donald Blake, astonished, shouts that he's not lame anymore. Blake says, you certainly the most beautiful woman I've ever encountered, but why would a goddess be in love with me? Sif, thinking to herself, no, she is forbidden to reveal that he possesses the soul of her beloved Thor, and that it is this connection she loves despite his mortal form. She replies, I beg thee, Don, ask no more, but take me in thy arm. These events parallel Thor 153, where Lady Sif finds herself in New York, drawing the attention of many onlookers. Suddenly, Loki appears with the intent to slay Lady Sif. Donald Blake, having been warned about Loki's evil ways, watches as Sif and Loki engage in battle. Loki gains the upper hand, delivering a double slap to Lady Sif. As Sif calls out for Thor, Donald Blake springs into action. He wraps his jacket around Loki's head and exclaims, may not be Asgardian, Loki, but I am no coward either, and nobody, not even a god with a magic staff, strikes the woman I love. As Blake's intervention causes Loki to lose his balance, the evil god begins to topple, but only moments later, Loki grabs Donald Blake and lifts him over his head in a gorilla slam, hurling him into a brick wall. Just as Loki is about to finish off Blake, Mjolnir returns, knocking Loki back. Thordis has arrived just as Loki expected. Thordis declares, "And now you'll see what happens when I spin my hammer to summon thunderbolts." As she calls down the thunder, Loki retreats, deciding to head back to Asgard. With Odin still in his Odin sleep, Loki knows there will be more opportunity to strike against Donald Blake. Despite the victory, Sif was injured in the battle and required immediate medical attention. With Donald Blake himself performing the surgery, Sif would recover, and the experience only deepened her bond with Blake. Meanwhile, in Asgard, Loki continued to observe and plot, thinking to himself, let them enjoy their brief moments of sentimental respite, for before the All-Father awakens, Thordis' mortal form shall perish, never to rise again. As the skies of Asgard darken, Loki thinks to himself, evil clouds do settle over the realm eternal, then this day that has finally come upon us. Meanwhile, on Earth, dark clouds gather as well. Thordis observes this, thinks to herself, the eyes of the mistress of storms have never seen clouds like this. I have a feeling only one person on Earth can explain their presence, and he seeks out Lady Sif. Anxiously, Thordis describes what she has seen in the heavens. Lady Sif responds, then thou hast behold the silent call, hurtling of the prophecy day, for surely Ragnarok is upon us, the day of death for two was written in fire. The day of Ragnarok shall witness the end of the world. She urges Thordis, saying, we must return to Asgard. These were the events foretold in Thor 155 as Donald Blake insists on fighting at Sif's sides or dying with her. Thordis then says, all right, both of you hang on because we're going to Asgard. Much like on Earth 616, the creature known as Mangog on Earth 788 was the embodiment of a billion souls destroyed by Odin for the past transgressions. Seeking revenge against Asgard, Mangog aimed to bring about Ragnarok by destroying the Odin's sword while Odin was in Odin's sleep. All the citizens of Asgard, except for Loki, would attempt to stop the creature, but to no avail. Mangog, as seen in Thor Classic issue 154 to 157, is the driving force of his alien race, possessing the combined strength of billions. Meanwhile, Loki, seated on his throne, awaits the chaos. Suddenly, three figures materialize on the Rainbow Bridge as the other battles to prevent Ragnarok, keeping the forces of destruction at bay. Thordis gives Donald Blake an enchanted sword, likely phrased magical sword, which fights on its own. However, the villainous monster Mangog soon appears, crashing through the doors with his immense power. With the strength of countless souls, Mangog slams into Thordis, seeking revenge. In one final devastating blow, he strikes her down. Lady Sif makes one attempt to stop Mangog, but he swats her away effortlessly. Mangog declares, long enough have I been delayed. Now let the awesome deed be done. Now let Ragnarok fall. Thordis, determined, rises and swings her mighty hammer, creating a colossal storm so titanic it could wake Odin. As she screams, the storm stirs Odin from his slumber. Odin, now fully awake, says, here stands Odin, power scepter in hand. Now from his sleep hath All-Father arisen. Mangog, shocked, finds his limbs frozen and unable to move. Odin declares, now hear the words of Odin. Ages ago in my supreme wisdom, I did place the entire race within an Odin spell, and now by imperial decree I break that spell. Mangog, though, were but an illusion, a living person in which thy race was jailed, but now I have ended the sentence. As Mangog fags away, Odin concludes, thy race shall live again. Donald Blake draws his enchanted sword on Loki, but before any further confrontation, Odin steps in and imprisons Loki once again. Odin then declares Ragnarok has been averted, and now it remains for Thordis to surrender Mjolnir, my hammer. For thy valiant deeds thou shalt be rewarded royally. But ownership of Mjolnir was decreed by the fate long ago. Thordis reluctantly hands over the hammer, transforming back into Jane Foster. Odin then turns to Donald Blake and says, now grasp the mystic Mjolnir. Confused, Blake replies, but a mortal cannot wield it. Odin explained, some of thy mortality was a mere illusion. Thou hast the true humility, and today display the courage and valor of an immortal. As Donald Blake grasps Mjolnir in his transforms into the god of thunder, Thor. To reward Jane Foster, also known as Thordis, for her sacrifice and help, Odin lifts her banishment from the hallowed realm of Asgard. Acknowledging his error in judgment, he humbly asks for her forgiveness and says, I bestow upon thee the promised reward. Though thou no longer possess the power of Thor, thou hast proven thyself a goddess, and a goddess thou shalt be forever. While Jane still harbors feelings for Thor, she realized that Thor's Thor's heart now belongs to Lady Sif, as their bond has grown strong in the universe. Odin, seeing her sorrow, reassures her, "Grieve not, dear lady, for those there is love ordained by powers beyond even that of Odin. Though Jane desires to become immortal again," Odin counters, saying, "and deny thyself the love of another who has lived perhaps too long without a woman by his side." Odin then proposes to Jane, offering her a chance to become his queen. As in the version of the universe, Odin has no mate, unlike his counterpart in the Norse myths or in Thor issue 274. In a timeless days to follow, guided by his wisdom, Jane Foster comes to know the serenity of Odin's love. The Watcher continues, saying, "But more importantly, Jane soon realized that the very qualities she admired and loved in the mortal Donald Blake were also present in the father of the immortal Thor. Who could say how long a courtship might last in the eternal realm? But when the royal wedding finally took place, even the skies of Midgard glowed radiantly as the countless blades flashed in the joyful tribute. Thor and Lady Sif both celebrated the marriage, wishing the eternal happiness to Odin and his new queen." The Watcher notes that what seemed like a long courtship between Jane Foster and the older Odin finally led to their union. Odin and Jane Foster were married while Thor and Lady Sif stood together to witness it. The Watcher continues, "Thus there is a rebirth and exchange. An Asgardian thunder god descends to battle the evils of Midgard. Thor and Sif return to Earth to face his many villains, while the Watcher concludes, a woman born on Earth shall reign eternally in Asgard as a queen of the Norse god. I know this, for I am the Watcher." Next, What If Volume 1, Issue 11. What if the Fantastic Four were the original Marvel bullpen?